But first, police in several states on high alert as pro-choice protesters target Catholic churches this Mother's Day weekend in hopes of bullying Supreme Court justices after the opinion draft on Roe v. Wade was leaked. The group Ruth Sent Us threatening to burn a Catholic display, tweeting, "Stuff your rosaries in your weaponized prayer. We will remain outraged after this weekend, so keep praying. We'll be burning the Eucharist to show our disgust for the abuse Catholic churches have condoned for centuries." In Wisconsin, the violence is picking up. At a pro-life organization, someone tagged the building, quote, "If abortions aren't safe, then you aren't either." And even threw what appears to be a Molotov cocktail into the window of someone's office, burning the inside. And this week, activists are planning to continue the protests outside the homes of Supreme Court justices after protests escalated last night. Republicans are condemning the threats being made against the justices.
The intent of this clerk was to bully and threaten and intimidate the justices to changing their votes. And I got to say, this week it was shameful that the White House refused to condemn violent protesters threatening the families of the Supreme Court. It is disgraceful.
Yet the mainstream media is trying to push their own narrative about who leaked the draft opinion: conservatives.
The leading theory is a conservative clerk who was afraid that one of the conservatives might be persuaded by Chief Justice Roberts to join a much more moderate opinion. And then there's another theory that it was an outraged liberal clerk. But I think the only one that makes sense is that it came from somebody who was afraid that this majority might not hold.
Yeah, that's NPR's Nina Totenberg there, Guy. There's so much to get to here, but I kind of have to start with her. She's been a reporter for NPR covering the Supreme Court for a long time. And it kind of sounds like maybe she knows more than she's letting on there, or maybe she doesn't know anything. What is your take of the media's reaction to all this and the way they've handled specifically the leak aspect of it?
Well, she said that it's the leading theory that this was a conservative who leaked it, and I would say that is one of the theories. It is maybe plausible if you think about it through a certain prism. It is not the leading theory, and it is certainly not the only one that makes sense, which is something else that she said there. So I happen to disagree on that. I also think the media in general, look, a lot of conservatives bemoan media bias. We've done that for a long time. It's been with us for decades. I would say that on abortion and guns, those are probably the two issues on which the media doesn't even try to be anything other than activists. It's not just bias, it is aggressive activism on this subject. And the fact that you have, and we discussed it on the show here yesterday, these mobs outside the private homes of Supreme Court justices, and the media is just sort of covering it as if it's normal, and the White House won't condemn it, which is effectively an endorsement of it. It's outrageous. And there was a piece over the weekend, Charlie, in the Washington Post, sort of like a puff story about one of these activists who has been parked outside Justice Kavanaugh's home. And it was sort of the sympathetic profile piece about her. If it were a right-wing protester at, let's say, Justice Sotomayor's private residence, there is no chance that person would get that kind of coverage, especially if some right-wing group had published and doxed the judges and the justices' personal information and home addresses on the internet. It's just unfathomable that that would be the case. And yet here we are, because the media is full bore in activism mode right now.
Yeah, no, it's truly incredible. Aisha, I think we have a quote here from Senator Lindsey Graham on Fox News Sunday today with Bret Baier. I want you to take a listen and yeah.
Will abortion now galvanize the left as it has for the right politically? Do you fear that heading into the midterms?
Single-issue voters seldom decide the outcome of an election. When you go to the grocery store and when you go to a gas station, that's going to remind you the incompetency of the Biden administration. When you look at the southern border, this is not going to take people's eyes off of rocket inflation, broken border, insecure America.
You know, Aisha, obviously there are a lot of legal questions that we're going to be talking about for a long time here. There are legislative questions, but obviously just as important as those things, there are also pretty profound political questions. What is your sort of sense of the political landscape right now vis-a-vis this whole fight going on?
Well, look, I think we talked about this yesterday. The midterms are 6 months away. That is a long time. Anything can happen between now and November. And there is so much else that can be done right now. The option for Democrats to give up, put up their hands and say to voters, look, we can't do anything until November is not a great option. So what I think we're going to see happen is maybe some more nastiness on the Hill in the next couple of weeks, specifically towards two senators, Manchin and Sinema. These are two senators that a lot of Democrats on the Hill have a problem with because they have not been able to budge on certain things, on certain pieces of legislation. And this is going to be just another one of those situations. Senator Schumer, Leader Schumer, wants this week to come back and bring back the Senate and take a vote to codify Roe v. Wade and to, make certain that this will be the law of the land across all states. This will be something that the legislature can do. But this probably isn't going to be able to happen. They're not going to be able to blow up the filibuster to make this happen. And you're going to have the spotlight back on these two senators, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. This has been a problem for Democrats over and over and over again. We've seen people like Bernie Sanders call this duo arrogant in the past. We've seen now public calls from AOC to primary Sinema. So I think, 6 months away, that is a long, long time. I think what we see in the next couple of weeks politically is probably this Democratic Party divide even more and really look for a scapegoat and probably find two scapegoats.
Well, it is kind of interesting to listen to Democrats talk about wanting to codify Roe v. Wade into law when that's all, this whole debate that's what this whole debate is about whether or not, allowing the legislature to deal with this as opposed to having the courts completely rip it out of the hands of the legislature and voters. Tammy, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, was commenting about this. Listen to this, and I want to get your reaction on the back end.
This is about basic equality. It's about whether women in America have a right to make these decisions, whether they have a right to decide who and when they have children with, under what circumstances.
It's kind of astonishing the degree to which people are getting away with distorting this issue. What's your reaction to that?
Well, those are comments I was making in the 80s when my activism began, 35 years ago. Things have changed, thank you very much, but they're desperate for the misery and the victimhood that existed when, in fact, these kinds of things were unclear, when there was no birth control, when abortion was illegal. But this is the kind of thing that manipulates people emotionally. So shame on her. And, earlier on, with all the videos of the protesters, those aren't protesters. Those are bullies and thugs. I love protests. I'm a community organizer. This is something that is at the heart of the American ideal. What's going on with a group like what we're seeing outside the churches and the homes of the justices is like Antifa. These are not legitimate dynamics. These are meant to intimidate, to bully, and all these campaigns on the left, it's like, oh, no hate, no bullying. They're the biggest bullies. They're the biggest thugs. And they want you to be moved only emotionally, because the moment you stop and think, you realize that this moves it closer back to the hands of the people, to women who are making their choices. And they should. Someone like Gillibrand should ask, why is this now happening in the Supreme Court? Why are we having a dynamic in the states where states are deciding where they want to move on this? Why have Americans rejected this hysteria? Because it's the 21st century. We do want women to be in control. This kind of decision allows women to be in more control by taking control of their state legislatures and by voting. But they don't want it to be. When Obama had the House and the Senate and the White House, they didn't move on this issue at all because it serves them. Everyone, I think, sees this for what it is. But don't mistake, what you're seeing outside right now has nothing to do with liberal activism or protests. This is something organized. It is from the top of the progressive left, which controls the Democratic Party. And it's the difference about who it is and a center of morality and decency when it comes to who's running this country.
Absolutely. And if it proves anything, it proves that this should be an issue that is decided by voters, not courts.
Yes.
Great stuff.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.